advice about how to raise children. People I go to work with who don't have children. Those people, I tell them all the time, don't you tell me about raising children till you look at your own in your face. Because those of you all that have children know how it turns you. It changes you into something else. You look at the world completely different after your children are born and after you look at them in the face. You understand what life is all about. You understand what's really important in life. So that song was from my mother, and like I said, I struggle to sing it every time I sing it in my mind. I struggle to sing it. But I hope she's listening right now. In fact, I know she is. As a matter of fact, I'm going to share this story with you real quick. I believe the reason why I'm standing here right now is because of my mom. And this is half jest and half belief. I believe that my mom was probably up there in heaven when I gave that city council speech, and she probably heard it. If they have these devices up there, she probably took that device of hers and looked at it and went over to God and said, this is my son. Can you share this with my son? I can see my mother saying that. I actually can. But I do. I believe she's the reason why I'm standing here right now in all seriousness. Because, the Bible tells us that the prayers of the righteous availeth much.
Amen.
And I know my mother laid down some mighty prayers for me and my brothers and sisters from the place that we came to make sure that we didn't go to the place that she had been and that my father had been. So I thank her today, and I thank my wife today as well for encouraging me all the time. But the very first thing I want to do, folks, and I do this all the time, and I say this all the time, and the reason why I say it all the time, and the reason why I keep repeating it and saying it the same way is because I want it to become something that catches all across this nation, in every mouth, in every hamlet, in every city, in every state. The very first thing I'm going to do today is give thanks to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Amen. Amen.
Why am I going to give him thanks? Take a look at that flag right there and everything that it represents. Now, some folks that only see the bad that flag represents, but I see the good that flag represents. Now look at that flag. Some people see oppression when they see that flag, and they see slavery when they see that flag. I see oppression and slavery when I see that flag as well. But guess what that flag represents? It represents overcoming oppression and slavery. It represents the men of America trying to carry that flag to overcome oppression and slavery. That's what I see. And the reason why that flag flies, and the reason why it is literally the lighthouse of this world. This nation is the lighthouse of this world for one reason. Because in the formation of this nation and in sustaining this nation, we have put Jesus Christ at number one. Not at number two, not at number three. We don't worship six-armed women and cows and statues of fat men with their legs crossed. We worship the Creator, the Alpha and the Omega. We worship the God of this universe, of this world, and we put him first in everything that we do. That's why that flag flies, and that's why it flies over a blessed and delightful land. So I give him thanks first and foremost today.
Amen.
I believe that all of us should, and we always should put him first in everything that we do. Now, why are we here? First and foremost, we're not here for Mark Robinson. You are not here for Mark Robinson. You might think you got out of bed this morning and said, I'm going to go listen to that Mark Robinson. I want to hear what he has to say. You are not here for Mark Robinson. You are here for Jesus Christ. Amen. You are here to hear a message that's coming straight from him. If you're not here to hear Jesus Christ, you might as well go ahead and leave. Because that's who you're going to hear today. Because that's who's speaking through me. I'm not speaking my own, I'm speaking my voice. But the words that are coming out of my mouth are coming through him. I guarantee you. And I'll challenge anybody over that. The words I spoke on March the 3rd, 2018, that's the right date, right? April 3rd, 2018. See, I told you I knew for everything. Right. Those words were not my own words. Those were his words. He put those words in my mouth. Could not have done it without his grace and his mercy. Amen. He had a message to deliver, and thank God he used me to deliver that message. So I'm here to preach his word, and I'm here to preach I'm here to preach his wisdom. which will give to all of us and has given to all of us. That's why we're here. So what are we here to talk about? Go ahead and get the 800-pound elephant out of the room. No, they don't need me. Let's go ahead and get right into this. Got this little thing going around right now. Every time I turn around, every time I go on social media, every time I turn on the television, even went on Amazon Prime to watch this silly television show that I liked for a little while last night. This thing called Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Now, who didn't know that? Who has to be reminded that black lives matter? The same way all lives matter. Let's take a little Black Lives Matter trip through history. Here we go. Some 378,000 Union soldiers understood that black lives matter because they gave their life on the battlefield to free those black lives. Amen. How did they do it? They didn't carry that banner right there. Colin Kaepernick says stands for oppression. That's the banner that flew at Gettysburg and Fredericksburg and all those terrible battles of the Civil War, where we were fighting a war for independence for a people. The first time that's ever happened in modern history. A nation went to war against itself over an institution called slavery, to end it for all time. Not to make people slaves, but to free slaves. And they did it under that banner right there. Let's go on through and look at some more things with Black Lives Matter. Let's go to the 1920s. Look at a lady named Margaret Sanger. Organization called Planned Parenthood. Let me tell you a story about that. See, I'm number 9 of 10 children. Number 9 of 10 children. Born to a black woman, a poor black woman in the South. Margaret Sanger could have counseled my mother. She probably would have told her, you're carrying a human weed in your belly. Somebody's going to grow up to be an alcoholic. His father's an alcoholic. His father beat you. You're poor. You have no business having a 9th child. You already have 8 others. You certainly don't need any behind you. You need to abort that child, get that child out of your belly, and save this society some heartache. Save him some heartache. And so the people that believe in Planned Parenthood now, that's how they think. They look at somebody who was born into my existence. They see us less than and think that for convenience sake, and dare I say, mercy's sake, that I don't have the right to life guaranteed to me under our Constitution and by my God in heaven. And that should be aborted. Then there's some other things we can look at when it comes to Black Lives Matter. Let's look at the violence that we see out on the streets every day. Faceless, nameless victims that the news media could care less about. Murdered every day. Just this past weekend in Chicago, 57 shot, 27 dead. Not a peep out of the mainstream media, and not a peep out of Black Lives Matter. I don't have anybody standing up for justice. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with anybody standing up against what happened to George Floyd. I have no problem with that. What happened to that man was terrible and should never have happened. And the person that did it to him should be punished. But here's what I have a problem with. I have a problem with their hypocrisy. You see, because if Black Lives Matter, those folks should be down there out in front of the abortion clinic with us. Amen. Falling down on their knees and demanding that black babies stop being murdered in the womb. And that those children be given a right to life like everyone else. Amen. They should be angry over the fact that Planned Parenthood targets those babies with advertisements and the locations of their facilities. They should be outraged, but they're not. Planned Parenthood, Black Lives Matter, should be angry over the deaths we see of innocent people due to violence in the streets. I'm going to do a real quick experiment here real quick. How many people have heard of George Floyd? Raise your hand. Keep them up if you heard of Michael Brown. Keep them up if you heard of Trayvon Martin. Now, put them down if you, put your hands down. Put your hands up if you ever heard of a fellow named Tyshawn Lee. You want to know who Tyshawn Lee was? Tyshawn Lee wasn't a criminal suspect. He wasn't some guy that got in a tussle with the police and died in police custody. Tyshawn Lee was a 9-year-old child living in Chicago who was kidnapped from his home, taken into an alley, and shot in the head execution style by one of his father's rival gang members. The killer later apologized for shooting that 9-year-old child. But he only apologized because he said he shot him too soon. You see, his original plan was to torture the boy for a few hours, videotape it, send it to his father, and then shoot him in the head, and then write a rap song about it. Black Lives Matter should have been all over Tyshawn Lee and should have made his name a household name. You see, we don't see that with Black Lives Matter. We don't see that. What we see is hypocrisy. The same hypocrisy that we see coming from leftists all the time. People are afraid to stand up and say this because they don't want to appear to be racist. They don't want to appear to be unfeeling. They don't want to appear to be uncaring. I care about people, but here it is. Newsflash. I care about all people. Amen. Not just black people, not just white people, all people. And if you say you're against injustice, you should be against it in every corner where it happens. And against every person that it happens. One of the reasons why these folks that are out screaming for justice right now can't get justice is because they don't give justice to their own. Amen. And it's high time somebody stood up and said it. 70% of homes without fathers. 95% of the murders committed by your own. And deaths like Tyshawn Lee, they turn a blind eye to. While they scream for justice in the street and deny it to their own. There is hypocrisy in the air with Black Lives Matter. And I want to make that plain. And I make that plain to anybody, anywhere. Not just this church, any church. Because it's time for the people of God to start standing up with the wisdom that he's given us in his word. And I would ask you now to search that word and find anywhere in that word where we're supposed to qualify ourselves based on this coloring on top of our skin. When Jesus Christ went to the cross, he didn't go to the cross and said, Black lives matter. White lives matter, all lives matter. He didn't say that. He went to bat for all of humanity. He died for all of humanity. Amen. This obsession that we have with the covering of our bodies is satanic. It is. Let me say that again. This obsession we have with our skin color is satanic. It is straight from the devil. Come on, brother. We have a news media that's complicit in this. They love to pit us against each other, white against black. This story today will enrage the black people. This story tomorrow will enrage the white people. This story tomorrow will enrage the Hispanic people. They're always keeping us in a perpetual state of rage. Rage. You can ask my wife the other day. I'd gotten tired of it. Almost to the point where I thought about just quitting everything. Finding a cabin in the woods and closing myself off from the rest of the world. But something changed it. You see, because in all of this confusion we have in the world, no matter what's going on, God will always make a way to pull you back in, to reel you back in, and show you what's important. Amen. And sometimes he uses the strangest things. Sometimes he uses the most obvious things. My wife showed me a video of my grandson sitting at his little table, watching some little cartoon, laughing. Like there was nothing else in the world except that little cartoon. He wasn't worried about any of this garbage that's on TV. He wasn't worried about the lying politicians, the lying news media, or anything. He was full of joy and happiness sitting there watching that little cartoon. When I saw that video, it not only brought me back to a place where I understood what was important, it made me realize what it is I'm fighting for. Amen. I'm fighting for him. And I'm fighting for the joy that's in his heart and to spread that joy to everybody. But before we can spread that joy, we've got some truths we got to take. And one of those truths is this. The folks that disrespect this flag, too many of them, forget who carried that flag. They forget about all the people who left their homes, left their wives and their husbands, left their sons and their daughters, and went off for a greater cause than themselves. They didn't go downtown and loot the Circle K or the Target. They didn't go down and hold up a sign against the police department that they know had their hands tied behind their back. They left their homes and went off to fight some of the most dastardly enemies this world has ever known, knowing full well that there was a good chance they would never see their people again. I told the story last week of an Italian immigrant who I read his words in a book and it brought tears to my eyes. He said, him and his family immigrated here in the early 1900s. When they came, his son was small, was a baby. A few years after they came, they had his son was a baby. He said his son was the absolute light of his life. He said, then the war came, meaning World War II. And I took my son to the train station. And I hugged my son. And I put him on the train. And he rode away. And I never saw him again. That's the kind of sacrifice that people have made under the banner of that flag. And to kneel on it and disrespect it spits in the face of every one of those people. Amen. You see these leftists try to make out like kneeling during the national anthem. Well, that's just a protest. I'm just trying to make my voice heard. You need to make your voice heard when it's appropriate and how it's appropriate. Because when you kneel down on that flag, you idiot. Yes, I called you an idiot. And if you're listening, you're an idiot if you kneel down on that flag. You're kneeling down on the very right that gives you the right to be able to kneel down and raise your voice in the first place. You're not only kneeling down on that flag, you're kneeling down on yourself. And let me add this, for a millionaire athlete, a millionaire black athlete who was raised by white folk to do it, it's 10 times more hypocritical. You must be out of your mind if you think I'm going to fall for that garbage. I'm not. Again, those lies and that hypocrisy is straight out of hell. That's why the news media loves it so much. Amen. That's why when I turned on Amazon yesterday, I saw that big black banner that said Black Lives Matter scroll across the top. See, because those folks love division. I love to sit down across the table from Jeff Bezos and ask him how much money he's giving to Planned Parenthood. And if he's giving money to Planned Parenthood, why he will allow the phrase Black Lives Matter to come out of his mouth. They obviously don't matter in the abortion clinic. And they certainly don't matter when they're wearing blue. You see, we got to get back to a place in this country where we become unafraid to tell the truth. Unafraid. We call ourselves Christians. Why did Jesus Christ go to the cross? Why was he killed? Because he told the truth. And he didn't just tell it to the garbage man or the blacksmith. He told it to the people in the places of high authority. He stood boldly and proclaimed it to everybody who would listen. And he wasn't afraid to tell it to those in positions of authority. Which leads me to my next point. They say the church is not supposed to be political. We're supposed to shut our mouths, sing our songs, say amen, and go home. We're not supposed to get involved in affairs of the state because there's this thing called separation of church and state, and you can't violate that. That's what the eggheads say. But guess what? We live in a nation where our two founding documents say this. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their who? Creator. Who is their creator? God. certain inalienable rights. That second document, the Constitution, the one they like to say, there's no references to God in the Constitution. You do know that, right? Maybe you ought to start again with the preamble and read that part where it says to secure the blessings of our liberty. Because our founders had already made it plain that the blessing of our liberty comes from our Creator, who is God. So yes, our Constitution mentions God, whether you like it or not. And this is a Christian nation. I don't have anything against Muslims or Hindus or anybody else. But I got a news flash for you. You didn't build this nation. The blood, sweat, and tears and the wisdom of Christians built this nation. I gave a speech some time ago at the NRA convention where I said this. This nation was not built on the ideas Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. Right. It was built on the ideas of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and the wisdom of Jesus Christ. Amen. That's how this nation was built. Anybody that takes the Bible and sets it next to our Constitution can plainly see that one mocks the other. And the Bible came first, so I guess we know which one is the mocking. It seeks to draw all of the wisdom from that Bible into it. We know that because when they got stuck writing, what did they do? They didn't go out and consult one of these highfalutin eggheads. Now, I say that word a lot, highfalutin eggheads, don't I? One day I'm going to do a whole speech about what a highfalutin egghead is. They went out and they beseeched the wisdom of Jesus Christ to understand how to finish that Constitution. And for my money, our Constitution, the Constitution of the United States of America, is the best document in the world, only second to the Bible. Amen. It secures our freedom and limits our government. Because let's get down to brass tacks, people. Anybody that's ever picked up a history book knows that when governments have all the power, they become tyrannical and become a terror to the people. And as such, our founding fathers made sure that wouldn't happen because they gave us our Constitution, where they affirmed our rights from God for all time and right. Now, there's some things in this nation, and I've already mentioned some of them. We desperately need to highlight, folks. We desperately need to highlight a few things. One of the things that we desperately need to highlight, we do this they do it all the time in Washington and Raleigh. They argue back and forth about it. Good men go to Raleigh and good men go to Washington and fight for the lives of the unborn every day. But guess who should be really fighting for the lives of the unborn? The very people who all too often are silent. And that's the pastors in some of these pulpits. Amen. I'm going to say this, and I hope somebody's recording this, and I hope somebody sees this, and I hope somebody gets mad about this. It is a shame before the Almighty, the silence of the lips that exist on the preachers of this nation over the lives of the unborn. How they've turned a blind eye and allowed that innocent blood to be spilled without nary a peep because they're afraid that they might come in next week and see a few empty seats and a few less dollars in that collection plate. Amen. Amen. You see, this religion that we practice called Christianity, all too often, they want us to appear weak. They love that image of Jesus hanging on the cross. You know the image of Jesus hanging on the cross? Weak and dead with his head hung down. They love that image. I think as Christians what we should start wearing is a stone around our neck. To symbolize that day when the stone was rolled away and Jesus Christ came out. Even though this time it was the day when he beat hell and the grave and death and all that good stuff. That is what we need to make sure we highlight as Christians. See, because they can kill us. I mean, they can silence our voice. They can come to you, throw a gag on you, tell you can't say it anymore. They can throw you in jail. They can even kill you. But guess what they can't get? They can't get your soul. Amen. And they can't get what your soul leaves behind. Amen. See, because when you speak up and you make a difference, doesn't matter how long you live, Doesn't matter how you die. The only thing that matters is where you're going and what you leave behind. Amen. Because in what you leave behind, you inspire people to carry on the work. Jesus Christ did his work. Get this down. Jesus Christ did his work without CNN, without Fox News, without NBC, without ABC, without television, without social media. Jesus Christ changed the whole world from the back of a donkey with 12 people standing beside him. And he left that same spirit for us to follow and commands us to do so. So these pastors out here who are silent because they're afraid, that is an affront to the Almighty. You know who the greatest man, according to Jesus Christ, who is the greatest man ever born to a woman? John the Baptist. Everybody likes all the stories in the Bible. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Threw him in the furnace, you know the story. Threw him in the furnace, looked in, saw four, not burned, survived. Yes. We like Daniel in the lion's den because the lion's mouth was shut. And we love the story of Jesus Christ because he died but he came back. Guess what? None of y'all coming back. Nobody's going to be Jesus, guys. You're not going to be Jesus. Can't be Jesus. There was only one. You can strive to imitate it and strive to be like it. Will never be Jesus Christ. That role is unattainable. It was only one and there's only going to be one. We can't be it. Guess who you can be? You can be John the Baptist. Amen. What was his story? Came to earth, proclaimed Jesus was coming, then got tangled up, told a king the truth, ended up getting his head cut off. No miraculous rescue. He literally got his head cut off and had his head handed to his enemies in a basket. When Jesus heard about him, his execution, he said that John the Baptist was the greatest man ever born to a woman. Why would Jesus say that? Because John the Baptist is the ultimate example, other than Jesus, the ultimate example of a human being sacrificing himself for what's right, standing on principles, and here it is, being courageous. You think about the story of John the Baptist. You think about it in prison. You think about the anger and the fear that must have been going through him when he knew he was going to be executed simply for telling the truth. And he did it anyway. He didn't relent and beg off like some of these politicians do. When somebody confronts them about a truth they told, he didn't back off. He didn't call out the spin doctors and say, well, what I actually meant was, I didn't mean that. I meant something completely different. He stood on truth, he stood on faith, and he lost his head because of it. So the question becomes this. Are you willing to lose your head because of the truth? Are you willing to lay down your life for what's right? Are you willing to risk your life for your family and your friends and your neighbors? Are you willing to sacrifice your life for the nation that flag represents? See, we got folks on the other side that will do all that. We saw that on 9/11. We saw radicals who believed that they have to kill to go to heaven, who were willing to blow themselves up in flames and take a whole lot of people with them for what they call their faith. Then here in America, people won't get up and go to church because there's golf tournament on television or football game on television. The pastor won't get up in the pulpit and preach the truth because he's afraid of what somebody might say about him. We've got to change that narrative, folks. And here it is. We talk about a political revival all the time in this nation. We talk about changing the political structure in this nation. The very first thing we've got to do in this nation is have a spiritual revival.
Amen.
We have got to bring back the tenets of Jesus Christ to this nation. The tenets that built this nation. And yeah, somebody might say, well, you had slaves and you built this nation on the backs of slaves and blah, 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 blah. But again, they never look at the fact that the very people who believe in those tenets, the tenets of that flag, and more importantly, the tenets of our Bible, of our faith, they are the ones that stood up against those bad things.
Yeah.
They're the ones that ended it. They're the ones that stood up against slavery. They're the ones that stood up against racist groups like the Ku Klux Klan. They're the ones that stood up and gave women the right to vote. So we need a spiritual revival in this nation. And if we have a spiritual revival in this nation, we won't have to worry about a political revival. That'll simply follow along right behind it. Amen. And I speak from experience because here it is. We never talked about Republican or Democrat in my house at all growing up. Here's what we talked about. We talked about what was fair and what was unfair. We talked about what was right and what was wrong. And the way we figured out what was fair and unfair and right and wrong was through the lens of faith and our belief in God. If God was for it, it was right. If he wasn't, then it wasn't.
Okay.
For far too long in this nation, we have forgot that principle. Our Supreme Court has forgotten that principle. Our politicians have forgotten that principle. And sadly, our pastors have forgotten that principle. For pastors to say the church shouldn't be political is a joke. There's more politics in the church than you can shake a stick at. Anybody who's ever been to one knows. The problem is we're not telling our folks about how important it is. You consider this. The last obstacle to crucifying Jesus Christ was who? God. Politics and religion are linked at the hip. Politics in every nation affects everything, from where you work to where you worship and how you do it. If politics don't align with your religion, one thing or the other is wrong. You don't know anything about one or the other. We see that a lot in this nation. People who will go to church every Sunday, to jump up and down, raise holy hands, and run up and down the aisles, then go out and get in the car with somebody's sticker on the back that believes it's all right to murder an unborn child. You've got to change the narrative, folks. And I'm going to tell you what, the narrative's not going to get changed in Raleigh. The narrative's not going to get changed in Washington, D.C. The narrative is going to get changed right here.
Amen.
You see, because Christianity is a finger-pointing religion. Let me say that again. Christianity is a finger-pointing religion. The problem is most of us do this instead of this.
That's right.
I never understood Christianity until I took my finger and turned it around to myself. And started examining what was in here, and what was coming out of here, and what was being done with these, and where I was going on these. We've got to start examining our own hearts. When I say we, I mean all of us. That means me. When I say we, I am talking to me. Because I can stand up here and I can tell you some stories. You see, I didn't always have on a suit and wasn't always up here talking about Jesus. And I'm sure some of y'all know what I mean. But it's not about where you came from, it's about where you're going. So that's what we got to do, folks. That's what we got to do. We got to start standing up for the lives of the unborn in this nation. We got to start standing up for our Second Amendment in this nation. Now, how in the world could I say stand up for the lives of the unborn and then say the Second Amendment? Here it is. God gives you the right to life. He gives you the right to life. He also gives you the right to protect your life. We've got to start standing up for our children as well in the education system. Somebody asked me one time about education and said, why are you so passionate about education and why should I care about education? I don't have any kids in school, don't have any grandyoungers, nobody I know is in school. I said, well, what are you passionate about? He said, I'm passionate about the Second Amendment, and I don't want them to take it away, and I think it ain't right what they're doing to our Constitution. I said, you know why they're doing that to our Constitution? Because they're educating people to do that to our Constitution. Or should I say, indoctrinating people to do that to our Constitution. So we've got to start fighting for that principle, for education. And I mentioned veterans a little while ago. Folks, we got to start standing up for our veterans as well. We pay our veterans lip service in this country. We send these young men and women off to go over there to fight these wars. When they come home, we say, thank you for your service. Walk away. You know, what's on television? What am I going to eat? We don't realize the sacrifice that these families have made for us and that these individuals have made for us. I had the privilege of talking to a young man up in the mountains who was grievously wounded in Iraq. And I asked him how his care was going. He said, well, when I can get there, it's fine. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, most of the time, I have to wait until I can get money to get gas from my truck so I can drive to the VA clinic. And I said, well, how far is it? He said, it's about 120 miles. Now, here's a guy that our government picked up, equipped up, shipped off, didn't spare a dollar, $1, and sending him off to go over there and get wounded. But when he comes home to go get care, it's on his dime. Something wrong with that picture.
Amen.
There's some wisdom missing somewhere in there. We got to change that. And folks, we got to start standing up for our police officers. Got these people running around here now talking about let's defund the police. You might not want to defund the police, because I know some guys and I'm one of them, and you don't want to deal with me. If there ain't no police to show, ain't gonna be no trial, ain't gonna be no jury, ain't gonna be none of that. It's gonna be you laying in my driveway. You might not want to defund the police. I don't have time to mess around with you, take you in there on the couch and sit you down and call 12 people to have a trial. I don't have time for that. I got an AR-15 and a shovel, and that's how we're going to handle it. But we got to start respecting those guys. I want you to think about this. Any law enforcement in the house? Any veterans in here? I knew I'd see some hands go up there. Yes, sir. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of y'all married to them know what I'm talking about, too. It's tough. I didn't spend 3 years in the reserve. Spending that time is tough. But these law enforcement officers, they get up every day. I want you just to imagine this scenario. Let's say you're 25, 26, 27 years old. You're married to your spouse who you love, and you have 2 small children. Let's just say they're 3 and 5. And you have to get up every day, put on a uniform. Underneath that uniform, you have to put on a bulletproof vest. Badge and a gun. Walk out the door and kiss those 2 little children in that wife, a wife or husband. Walk out that door, knowing today might be the day. Today might be the day that you pull over that guy that's had it, on the run, do anything to get away, and he might get the drop on you, and you might not get to go home to your family. You might die in a high-speed accident. Some crazy person might run over you while you're directing traffic. That some nutcase sniper from a rooftop might shoot you because you got on a uniform and he's been listening to Colin Kaepernick over and over again. But every day in this nation, millions of men and women get up every day and go do that. And they don't do it for fame or fortune or glory or so that everybody knows their name. They do it because they love their communities and their nation just that much.
Amen.
And to have these people who've never served under that banner, never served their neighborhoods in any meaningful way, remain silent when their friends and neighbors are murdered, turn a blind eye to all those children aborted in their clinics, to have those people besmirch the name of the 99.9% of the police officers who do an honorable job every day in this nation is disgusting. We have to stand up and make that plain. We cannot tolerate injustice by having policemen kill suspects on the street like George Floyd. But I'm going to tell you what else we can't tolerate. We cannot tolerate those good young men and women being besmirched by people who would have this nation trampled underfoot We have to speak up against it, folks. If I leave you with anything in here today, it's this. You don't have to know the Constitution, word for word. You don't have to be a constitutional scholar. As a matter of fact, I would suggest you not be a constitutional scholar. Because it seems like whatever they teach these constitutional scholars, it's the exact opposite of our Constitution.
Right.
You don't have to be in the position I'm in, you don't have to run for office. You don't have to be a politician. You don't have to be some important person on Facebook with thousands of followers. Here's what you need to be. You need to be unafraid. You need to be bold. You need to be courageous. Just like John the Baptist. And you need to really, and listen to this, you really need to be willing to say this. Because if you're a Christian, you will believe it. You need to be willing to believe and know that you would rather have your head held by your enemies on earth than have your soul secured in hell forever.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Because folks, it's just that important. The ultimate thing in this nation is not whether or not you're going to vote Democrat or Republican. It's not whether or not Donald Trump gets back in office. Lord, let's hope he does. It's not whether or not we're going to get our supermajority back in office. It's not whether or not we're going to get our court system straightened out. We need all those things. But the ultimate thing in life is this. Where are you going to spend eternity?
Amen. That's right. Amen.
And what are you going to leave behind? And who are you leaving it to? Those are the things that we need to ask, the questions that we need to ask first. And after we ask those questions, we need to beseech God's wisdom, and we need to beseech his strength. Because, folks, I know y'all watching that same one-eyed wonder too that I've been watching. That lie factory called television. If there's one good thing about it, it gives me a peek into the demons that are trying to destroy this nation and the world. Gives me a peek into their playbook and how evil they are. And you see it. Fight that evil, folks. It's going to take strength, courage, and faith. God gives us all three. We need to deploy all three in this fight. And we need to make sure that when we leave this earth, that we go to heaven, and we leave a legacy behind to encourage others to do the same. Thank you very much, guys, for your time.